Hello, good evening. My name is Anya Aleman, and I'm a Civic Innovation Specialist for the City of Pittsburgh. I wanted to say thank you so much for being here. This is an Inclusive Innovation Meetup. This is a monthly meetup that we do in partnership with the City of Pittsburgh and the URA. Today we're featuring Pgh Lab companies, and Pgh Lab, well actually, can I ask, who doesn't know about Pgh Lab? Okay. Well, thank you for coming and learning. So Pgh Lab is a company, it's a program for at the City of Pittsburgh and the URA, where we bring local startups to test products and services for 3 to 4 months. Right now, we're going through the final third cycle, and we launched the program in 2016. It was a pilot program. It was really successful, so we kept on running more cycles. So today you're going to hear from our biggest cohort yet, and we have 7 wonderful companies all proposing very innovative solutions. This could not be possible without the help of city employees that connect with the companies and also help them through a pilot project for 3 months. And together they work on a problem or solution that they want to address. So without further ado, I first also wanted to thank our host, Google, for having us here in this really beautiful space. It's really nice. And also our event partner, Idea Foundry, and we will learn more about them in a little bit. So I would like to introduce Jennifer Wilhelm from the URA. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. The Urban Redevelopment Authority is so excited to be a founding partner for this program. We have watched it grow from 3 companies to 5 companies to now 7 companies. And really the only reason I'm standing up here is to thank Anya, because none of this would be possible without her. This program has been growing and developing and getting better every single cohort, and it's because of Anya. So thank you, Anya. Thank you to the companies for going through this program, for bringing all your enthusiasm and your skills and your products and your services, because on behalf of the government, I'm very excited to be able to engage with you all. So thank you.
Thank you. Nice shout out. All right. And I would like to introduce John from the Parking Authority. And the Parking Authority is our newest partner, so we are very excited to have him here.
Thank you. So I'm John Fournier. I'm the director of on-street and metered parking at the Pittsburgh Parking Authority. And yes, the parking enforcement officers work under me. I'm really sorry. But we're really excited to be participating in this program. And I also want to thank Anya for the great work that she does, because she really wrangled us. Yes, more applause for her. She really wrangled us into participating in this program, and it's been a tremendous benefit for us. And we're working with Zensors, great startup out of Carnegie Mellon University. And you might think that what we do at the Parking Authority is hide behind bushes and write tickets all day, but what we actually do is wrangle a lot of data and use evidence and data and facts to help manage our public right-of-ways. And Zensors is helping us do that with a really innovative installation on Walnut Street, where we're using cameras to count cars and to count pedestrian activity and to find out the relationships between the two, and to use that data to create a dynamic pricing model for our meters, which is really cutting-edge stuff in the municipal parking world. It's weird to say the municipal parking world, but it really is a really cutting-edge project, and it wouldn't be possible without Anya wherever she went and this wonderful program. So thank you so much. We're so very excited to be participating and to continue to participate moving forward.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to get to why we're here. And so I would like to introduce Nicole Muise-Kielkucki. Yes. Nicole, she is the Director of Impact Innovation at Idea Foundry. She holds a Master's of Food Studies from the School of Sustainability and Environment at Chatham University. And she has been a great supporter of local entrepreneurs for quite several years right now. So I'm really excited that she agreed to help moderate the discussion, and I'm happy to share how wonderful she is. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to now...
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming today. This is a really exciting program, and as everyone already said, Anya is awesome for running it. So I'm really excited to be moderating tonight's panel because there are, like everyone said, 7 companies this round, and I know a few of them, and I'm just meeting a few others of them. We work with entrepreneurs at Idea Foundry that have a positive impact on society and the environment. So civic tech and this conversation is really near and dear to my heart. So can we just bring all the panelists up, and then we can sit down and we can introduce everybody. So let's see, how are we gonna? Okay, I guess oh, am I in the middle? Oh no. Okay. All right, so let's start down here. So we have Christian from Cropolis. So Cropolis is partnering with the city planning for the city of Pittsburgh. Cropolis solves some of the biggest challenges faced by small and medium-sized farms by automating the best practices in farm marketing, sales, and administration. The company increases availability, accessibility, and ease of purchase for healthy local foods, and Cropolis is matched with the Department of City Planning. So we have, let's see, Global Wordsmiths with Mary Jane. And Global Wordsmiths is a social enterprise that provides language, translation, interpretation, training, and consulting services. Global Wordsmiths will pilot its full stack language access planning service with the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh. Let's see, MetaMesh, hi. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to meet you earlier. So this is Adam from MetaMesh. MetaMesh Wireless Communities is a nonprofit organization that bridges the digital divide in Western PA by using mesh networking technology to provide communities with a low-cost public Wi-Fi option. MetaMesh builds these networks and teaches others about networking and Wi-Fi, and the company is matched with the Housing Authority. Netbeez. Sorry, hi, Stefano. So Netbeez is a Pittsburgh-based network performance monitoring company that provides proactive network monitoring from the end user's perspective. Netbeez software and software sensors enable proactive identification of the most complex network issues by revealing the issue before it impacts users. The startup will be working with the Department of Innovation and Performance. We also have Qlicket with John. So Qlicket is an office communication solution that offers organizations a simple, natural way to solicit feedback. Qlicket software drives engagement and helps companies address workplace issues more effectively by providing the most direct and scalable way to hear and respond to the voice of their employees. And Qlicket is working with the URA. Steel City Soils with Jeff. Steel City Soils is a cooperatively managed group that works together to recycle food and yard waste. The group focuses on making the highest quality and product possible for urban food. And they are with the Office of Environmental Services and the Forestry Division. And then finally we have Zensors with Anurag Jain. And Zensors uses artificial intelligence software to provide human-centered and actionable sensor output with minimal hardware installation, allowing the user to make data-driven decisions. The company is working with the Parking Authority, as we just heard. So sorry, I didn't realize how long each of those descriptions was, but it was really great to hear what everybody is working on. Can we? Yeah, right, exactly. I did it for you. Maybe we can start just by talking a little bit and hearing from you all about why you founded the company that you founded. I know that when we work with social enterprises, we often find that the entrepreneurs are driven by some personal or a problem that they're experiencing personally or that they're well acquainted with. So can you talk a little bit about your impact and what your company does and why you started the company?
So hello, I'm Christian from Cropolis. And as Nicole had mentioned, we automate some of the best practices in marketing and sales and administration for small and mid-sized farms. And sort of the motivation for this came from my background in agriculture technology, and I'm really familiar with farms and sort of how agriculture is changing and growing, and how technology is impacting that. And being somebody who lives in the city, I'm very aware of sort of the demand for local foods in the city, and also aware of sort of sometimes how difficult it can be to find these. And I originally our team originally thought that this was more of a supply-demand issue. Like, if there's so much demand for it, there must not be a supply. But in reality, it's not that case. And what we find is it's much more of a connectivity issue. And that's what we aim to address through Cropolis. And really that's by providing technology to these small and mid-sized farms to help them reach their customers, whether that's their retail customers or their wholesale customers.
Hey, I'm Jeff from Steel City Soils. I had the idea to start making compost about 10 years ago. I was volunteering on Braddock Farm, and I had read a book about the idea that urban landscapes could provide over half of the calories that we needed, and maybe we wouldn't have to go cut down new old growth forests if we stopped mowing our lawns and grew food. So at that point, my question was, if I envision people growing food in the city and doing it organically, how much compost are we going to need to do that? And what we found out was we probably won't ever have enough, but we started then hauling from one restaurant, and now we process about 7 or 8 tons a month of food waste. And it's all trying to get it back into food-growing soils in Pittsburgh.
Hey everyone, I'm Anurag from Zensors. So a lot of the work that we were doing at CMU between me and founder Gerard here was around sensing in environments, looking at what IoT can do for us today, and how we really felt that there was a big gap in what IoT had promised us, and this idea of having a smart home or a smart building or a smart city, and what was actually available today. And a large part of that was because the cost of installing a lot of these devices and sensors is very, very expensive, and they need a lot of maintenance. And so we dug into what are some ways to sense using multiple modalities on a single point and explore that. And we realized that there's all of this infrastructure that's already in place. A lot of people use cameras for security, and they use camera systems, and they don't really use them effectively because they install them, and then when something happens, they go back and look at it. But with a lot of changes in machine learning and AI that have been coming, there's ways to analyze images and activities and actions, and we thought of if we can piggyback on this infrastructure and use those already installed devices to do IoT-like smart actions. And that's where we came about with this, initially just for spaces and indoor environments. But then we realized after talking with John at the city that you can do this across a much, much larger canvas to drive interactions with all of the spaces that we use often. And that's kind of where we've been pushing now towards really using existing infrastructure to make it really cheap and easy for anyone to deploy a smart environment or a smart city.
All right, John Goldschmidt from Qlicket. Actually, my colleague Vivek founded the company about 5 years ago, and it was really, the focus was around communication in the hospitality space. So really about gathering feedback in a more natural way, so you can really get those latent thoughts from guests when they're at a hotel. And the key is that it's natural and it's while the guest is still on site. So there's some actionable feedback that can be taken away. I joined about a year ago as a co-founder and we've expanded the product into the office space. Not specifically or only the office space, but in HR perspective. So how do we take that same idea of natural communications and gathering latent thoughts and put that in the workplace? And now we have a solution that is for both office kind of knowledge desk-bound spaces and as well as blue-collar workplaces. And again, turnover is expensive for organizations. It's also painful, and so we're addressing that by just facilitating communication, and oftentimes that level of engagement can cause a lot more productivity, safety, enjoyment in the workplace.
I'm Mary Jane with Global Wordsmiths, and I founded Global Wordsmiths because I'm actually a trained translator, interpreter myself. And I just noticed in Western Pennsylvania, in larger cities where there are more diverse populations, there tend to be better language access supports for immigrants and refugees who don't yet speak English. But in Rust Belt cities, there's nothing at all. So for example, if you are a mother of children here in the city of Pittsburgh and you'd like to make an appointment with a dermatologist or a pediatrician, you just can't. There's no way to do that unless somebody who speaks English makes the call for you. And so there are plenty of language service providers out there, but we wanted to do things with a higher social impact. And so I launched Global Wordsmiths just for the purpose of trying to bridge that gap between providers and limited English proficient individuals in Western Pennsylvania and then eventually in Rust Belt cities.
Hi, my name is Adam Longwell. I'm the Executive Director of MetaMesh Wireless Communities. We don't have an answer that is so polished and businesslike. Originally, we were like, hey, let's build a Wi-Fi network between our friends' houses and we can play video games together. And once we realized that we were sufficiently far away from each other, we said, okay, we're going to have to get some other people involved and we're going to have to build a wireless network between our houses with, a couple people in between. We never really got around to playing video games on it, but in the process of exploring this idea of, building out this wireless network that anyone could use and anyone could get on, we said, oh my God, we found a superpower. We found this way to really inexpensively deliver internet access wirelessly throughout communities, and by using people's bandwidth that they're already paying for, right? I mean, that was the original idea. We would say, hey, business, would you share your bandwidth? And they would share it, and then we'd get a couple other businesses, and suddenly there's public Wi-Fi up and down Braddock Avenue, and it costs $0 a month, including at the Braddock farm. Yeah. So we're moving away from that model, but we're still committed to bridging the digital divide by using wireless technology to just eradicate the cost of implementing these digital oases in our neighborhoods. So that's what we do.
Hi, I'm Stefano Gridelli, co-founder of Netbeez. So we started Netbeez 5 years ago because we were network engineers, and network engineers, if you don't know, they're like plumbers of computer networks. In the end, we we let people flow data packets one way to another. And as part of our duties is also support users. And if something breaks, you call us and you yell at us, and we have to fix the problem. So what we realized is that actually the users were aware of problems before us, because we didn't have the right tools in place to detect problems from the user perspective, because existing network monitoring tools would tell you, yeah, the router is up, the switch is up, but it's like when you're home, your router is up and everything looks good, but then Netflix is low. So we decided to build like a small sensors in the end, and install these sensors at each office, and then monitor the network from the user perspective and detect the problems before users do detect and call their desk. So bottom line, it was by a need experience as a network engineers, and now is a tool that is used by many large companies, including now the city of Pittsburgh. And basically what we do this, we provide proactive alerting to network and application performance issues, and we provide the data sometimes to prove that it's not the network, as you can read from my t-shirt, because oftentimes the user has the perception that when they cannot connect to an application, is actual network not working, but oftentimes it's something else. And actually network engineers are struggling a lot to figure out or to gather the data whether or not is a user or network problem. So we also provide network engineers through a dashboard all the data that they need to not only proactively detect problems, but also prove whether or not is a network issue.
Great, thank you. So that was a general overview of what you all do. Could you describe a little bit about the specific pilot project that you're doing with the city of Pittsburgh, how it came about, where did the idea come from, what type of impact are you hoping to make specifically on Pittsburgh and our city residents? And maybe we'll start this way and come down.
Yeah, so the idea came from first-hand experience. So as network engineers, we lived this many years. We really struggled with this problem, and we were so passionate that we wanted to address this problem. Probably the network monitoring market is not the best profitable market where you want to start a startup, but we were so passionate about it that no matter what, we want to build this software, this solution. And we started 5 years ago, thanks to Alpha Lab, I would say, give us the initial funding. So we applied with just an idea, a slide deck, and a team, which was very important. And we were accepted into the Startup Accelerator. And then little by little, we were able to acquire customers, pay our bills with the revenue, but also get some funding. We got some funding, but we were not highly funded like other companies. And so far, things are good. We are a team of 10, and we have many customers we're working with. And then you had another question about the implementation with the city of...
Yes, so specifically, what is the process? What was it like to come up with the pilot project? How did you come up with it? And what's it been like working with the city, coming up with it so far?
Yeah, so the process was very easy and simple, and thanks to also to the work of Anya and her staff and the city of Pittsburgh. It's as any customer onboarding we do. We basically, of course, submitted a proposal to implement Netbeez monitoring into the city of Pittsburgh. City of Pittsburgh has a network that is comprised of many buildings and like police, fire stations, city councils, and so on. So we submit the proposal, and then once we were accepted, we install our sensors, one in each location, that were included as part of the pilot. We loaded the server, and then basically we went through the proof of concept, started from February till now. So as of now, we have some locations monitored. Of course, not the entire network, because there's dozens of network locations, so we took a sample. And again, the process was very simple. We got a lot of assistance from Anya and her team, implementing, making sure that each step in the implementation process was going through. Of course, the city of Pittsburgh is very busy with so many projects, so having someone, and also the city champion, which is Sylvia Harris, in the innovation and performance group, they really help us making sure that the proof of concept will go through without any impediment.
Great.
So we were paired with the Housing Authority, and the first part of the question was what?
Just tell us more about the specifics of the
project?
Of the pilot project.
So when we were paired with the Housing Authority, we were pretty excited about that because we had explained in kind of the initial interview process, like, it's one thing to get donations. People can do that. Anybody can do that. Anybody can give you $1. And it's another thing to have volunteers. And we've gotten a lot of those people come forward and say, I want to help. But not everyone has a 12-story building. And so the Housing Authority was a great fit because we had already had a project where we had been on one of the buildings in Allentown where we started. And so the people had heard of us in the past and trusted us and knew that we weren't going to burn their building down. And so we said, can we get on a few more buildings? We got 3 buildings, or 3 sites, Housing Authority sites, that we would love to be on, and it would allow us to move our bandwidth much further than we ever could without these buildings. And they said, yeah, sure. It was pretty much that easy. I mean, some lawyers got involved and they had some questions, but for the most part, the everyday workers who we have to communicate with to get permission, open doors, they really like what we do. They're very supportive of it, and it was surprisingly easy to work with what seemed to be such a monolithic entity at the start. It was very easy.
Great.
I'm going to use this time. With Global Wordsmiths, when we launched last year, we were initially only providing language translation and interpretation services, but the market told us that addressing the systemic causes for poor language access was very important, and it was also important for getting clients to understand the importance of what we're doing. So we developed a training curriculum to go out into the community and teach people what language access is and why is it so important. And then, some of the specifics too, like how to work with interpreters, where to sit, who to make eye contact with. But also we realized that organizations needed to learn how to plan for what to do when individuals who do not speak English approach their organizations. And so the Housing Authority seemed like a really good fit because they do have several Somali Bantu communities, Nepalese, Arabic, Russian, Spanish-speaking individuals living at all of their housing units. I didn't initially think that Pgh Lab was for us because I thought it was only tech, but then I found out it wasn't, and Anya sort of talked to me about getting on board, and since then everything's been going really well. My champion has been really helpful in helping me set up trainings, and what we're actually doing is building a language access plan for the Housing Authority as a deliverable, so that when the relationship ends, we will have identified all of their points of contact. We will have identified people to be in charge of certain tasks. They'll know who to call if, say, an Arabic speaker walks through the door, and they'll have sort of plans and policies and procedures in place. So that's kind of the purpose of our pilot.
Great.
All right. Yeah, thanks again to Anya. It was the program was really just so well organized, and we got a lot out of it, and it was kind of what our product does really, as I mentioned earlier, is gather latent thoughts and feedback, kind of momentary feedback in a very natural way. And so when we talked to Columbus, who was our sponsor and at the URA, who's the head of HR, and they had just gone through a whole bunch of surveys and questions of the employees, trying to get to the bottom of how they could improve, how they could improve the culture and what kind of things are on everybody's mind. And the sense, kind of what he expressed to us, is that people are really kind of a little bit worn out from always thinking about the culture and like their surroundings, and let's just do something fun. Let's get people engaged and like having fun with this. So I don't want to ask about, what do you think about your manager? Or what do you think about this or that? And we were totally fine with that. He came back with a bunch of questions. We had our own bank, and he came with some, and we ended up asking. So what we did in the actual implementation is ask a mix. And by the way it works is there's a pop-up that comes on the user or on the employee's screen. We have some software that's embedded on the desktop. And when you sign in the morning, each day there's a quick question of like what you think, and then you have a moment to provide a little bit of free text response too. So it's kind of like a survey, but you're not in survey mode. You're just in I'm starting my day mode. It's Wednesday. I had a rough commute, and I'm just gonna kind of voice that. Anyway, we weren't really getting to the bottom specifically of elements of the workplace and culture. But we were getting people to open up because we were asking things like, what did you think about on your way to work this morning? And then multiple choice, and then is there anything else that's on your mind? And when we were running this pilot, we were kind of like, this is really valuable for us because we're getting, from a technical perspective, experience on rolling this out to different users and like how people are interacting, and we're working out the kinks. And it was like, we'll probably get into this later, but it was a really safe place to do that. But when we looked at the data at the end, we started looking at these free text responses and noticing that people were like, in asking, we actually asked people, the last question we asked people is, did you find any value in doing this? Because we were like, from our perspective, I don't really care what people think about on the way to work in the morning, and I'm not sure why Columbus does either, but people said I really actually appreciated just getting things off my chest from time to time. Even if in knowing that somebody was actually looking at it, even if it was anonymous, and even if I didn't get a response. So that was that's kind of how we ran the pilot, and there was like, we thought we'd just get kind of the mechanical operational side out of the way, but we actually learned a little bit of something too about how people appreciate communication on a daily basis. Was there anything I missed? That was about it. Okay.
So when we first kind of met Anya, we were fairly early, and we were just getting started out, and we were more of a technology that could do several things, but had not really found a focus on what we were going to do as far as sensing. And I think she was fantastic in helping us work with John, who at the Parking Authority had this vision for how he wants to improve parking, but has been struggling because all of the things he's tried out there are either too expensive or too complicated for him to deploy, and he's been exploring a ton of different solutions. And he came to us and he was like, hey, I have this vision. Can we work together, and can we use your technology to really try and see if this is possible? And his idea was that the parking meter rates everywhere are determined at some point and set. And he's like, maybe there's less utilization. We want to promote people to come out to businesses and use these neighborhoods more. And how can we do that? And then how can we avoid traffic when it's rush hour and everyone's circling around the block looking? And so part of us, in this was taking our technology and saying, hey, it looks like you have an amazing, application here that we think we can help you fulfill. How do we, modify and help cater our technology to match that for you and work with you to make sure we can actually make this happen? And so it was fantastic from our standpoint where, he came in knowing exactly what they wanted, and they identified that our technology could help them solve that as a solution, and then begin a pilot around deploying cameras in a couple of major business districts, like we have some in Walnut, and we're just looking at the car counts at any given point in time to help him then do all kinds of, like he mentioned, parking is all about data. So just providing him that fabric of data to optimize how parking is placed, or how parking is enforced, or how parking is priced even. And so far it's been a great relationship with just figuring out how we can take our technology and make it possible, and then go beyond that, where we're now looking to explore what's the correlation between that and the footfall for businesses. So can we use, can he tweak the parking system to actually increase footfall and increase revenue for all these local businesses that are there?
So when we entered the pilot, I basically had 2 points. One was that I was pretty familiar with the city of Pittsburgh having a zero waste strategy. And the other was that the city forestry trucks are out there. They're shredding up tree waste, and they're compiling it. And they mix the shredded stuff with the unshredded stuff, then they pay to process it. So in essence, I was saying the shredded stuff, instead of paying to shred it twice, we could take that, combine that with the food waste, and we'd be reducing 2 waste streams, which so ideally we could save the city money and also help them towards their zero waste strategy. So we got in the pilot, and we needed land and wood chips. And so the Department of Public Works was very gracious. They gave us, you can see their yard in Highland Park. And we got wood chips from city forestry. So we were off and running, and we did community events. And one thing that was very successful that I didn't really expect was we piloted residents bringing their food waste during designated hours. And it was pretty successful. And actually we'll be at Bloomfield Farmers Market all summer collecting resident food waste. But during our pilot, 3 or 4 months isn't a lot to make compost, but we did process about 2.5 tons of food waste on a very small footprint. So that's what we did.
Really nice. Thank you. Great. So as I had mentioned in sort of the initial introduction here, most of the work that we do revolves around direct farm sales to like wholesale or retail relationships. And so what that really means is, like, for a wholesale relationship, for example, that's where a farm would be selling directly to like a restaurant or maybe to a grocery store. And then a retail relationship might be where a farm is selling directly to their customers. And from our work in that over the past couple of years, we've really realized that like a lot of the same best practices apply in both situations. And over this past year, or actually over the winter, which is like conference season in agriculture, we'd gone to a number of conferences and realized, we sort of heard this common theme, which is, wouldn't it be great if you could do some sort of online sales in farmers markets as well, or pre-market sales rather. And so we thought this was a really awesome opportunity to bring this to the city of Pittsburgh and actually work with the city of Pittsburgh and their farmers markets and bring it to the farms here. And so what we did is we applied to the Pgh Labs program. And thank you again, Anya, for setting this up and helping us sort of navigate through this. And we were paired with Shelly Danko-Day. And she really was our champion within the city and helped us connect with farms and communicate the purpose of this, and also how this can be beneficial to the farm and their customers. And so to sort of put this into terms that might be more relatable to like you or I, from a farmer's perspective, having pre-market sales can be really useful because farmers market sales, frankly, are just very variable. And so for a farm to actually know that they're going to have sales before they show up and know that their customers are going to arrive is really meaningful. That can make the absolute difference between a successful and a not successful market. And so that's really important. And from the customer's perspective, and this is probably how most of us are looking at this, it's that likely all of us love participating in farmers markets, but it's really difficult to make that source of food sort of the main source of our purchasing throughout the week. And that comes from a couple different reasons, some of which might be like we don't know what to expect and we don't know exactly where to get it from. And so we help the farmer really connect with their customers through this platform, help them really connect with their customers, and for customers to actually know what to expect at the farmer's market. And that allows them to purchase more and to participate sort of more deeply in their local agriculture. And that's pretty exciting, we think, frankly. And so from the city's perspective and what we've been able to accomplish from this, most of the timing over the Pgh Labs trial has been in sort of the market off season. And so Shelley's really helped us, sort of, like we said, connect with the farms and get them onboarded into this process and get them set up for the growing season, or the market season rather. And then we're actually going to continue working through them or with them throughout the season. And the whole goal of this is to say, this has been an idea that's been talked about a lot. But through this trial, we're actually really able to engage deeply with the farms and say, like, does this make a meaningful impact for you? And then does this make a really meaningful impact for your customers? And if it does, then this develops that as a really awesome use case for farms sort of better utilizing their farmers markets.
That's great. So I'm going to I think you were starting to talk about this anyways. So can you talk about why a program like Pgh Lab is important? So you're doing real tests with a real agency and authority in the city. What have you learned so far in terms of both exciting things that happen that you learned that are going to help you out, and also any pitfalls, any lessons learned, anything that this pilot really illuminated for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of working with the city, it's been really awesome to get sort of the insider's view into how they organize their markets and how they work with the farms, because it's really just a massive organization of so many different people and parties, and a community as well. And so to see what sort of we play directly with farms primarily, and to see the farmers market aspect of this has been really impactful for us to learn a lot about sort of the nitty-gritty details of how this works. And then, working with Shelley has really helped us understand sort of the dynamics that farmers play with, or the sort of the constraints that they have when working with something like this. And so just sort of getting the insider's view has been really useful. I think from entering the program, we probably set a sort of optimistic and aggressive timeline in pushing this forward. And then actually realizing like all the steps that you have to go through to execute something like this and to make it work has been certainly a challenge for us. But that's also just a learning experience. And that's sort of the opportunity that Pgh Labs presents companies like ours to work with the city, for example, where you get sort of that personal touch. You get somebody who, like, you're here for a very specific reason, and they're here to help you optimize sort of this model that you proposed. And so for us, that's extremely beneficial. Did I answer all your questions?
That was great.
All right,
thanks.
Well, working with the city, I never thought we would be able to. So even though our company is 10 years old, I do still consider it a startup. And so it was really great to see that there is an initiative to try and work with smaller businesses who are trying to come up with different things. One pitfall for us and the work that we do is we need large pieces of land, and ideally for us closer to where the food waste is being produced. So we're not able to afford that on our own. So a big benefit to a project like this is being able to borrow the city's land And as I mentioned before, the success of having people bring to the site during designated hours. And we know that in other cities where the economic realities are different, they do pay to collect food waste at farmers markets. So that's something that we're excited to explore in Pittsburgh and see if that's something that we can pull off. Thanks.
Yeah, I think for us, deploying any sort of solution on a scale of a city or even a neighborhood is really difficult to do without having, worked with many people in the city. And it's almost impossible for us to have approached the city independently without such a channel and have executed this in the kind of timeline that we were able to do it in. And I think that's one of the big advantages I see of Pgh Lab is that it's not very long. It's long enough, and with Anya pushing through at every step of the way, we can actually get through a cycle of having this deployment and working with the city champion and not letting it kind of linger and take a really long time. Because more often than not, that's the perception of working with cities is things take really long and it's going to take forever. But in this case, the program really helps make sure that in this structured amount of time, you're able to work with someone and push forward and get a good outcome up from it.
Yeah, I mentioned this before. The main thing that was really valuable for us was, first of all, as a safe place to deploy our product. This was one of the first times we deployed it, so that was amazing. Also, it was really a really great opportunity to, I guess, work with an organization and get it out there. The thing that I would recommend, probably, I'll talk about a pitfall. And this is Pilot 101. If anybody hasn't run a pilot or deployed a product, know if you have a certain amount of time you're rolling it out for, know what you want to accomplish by the end of it. For us, it was great. We did it because that's something we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to deploy it, but at the end of the day, the way it was being used wasn't exactly the way that we had envisioned it. At the end of the day, it all worked out. It all worked out really well. But there were times when Anya and I were meeting, and I was like, she's like, well, what do you think about how things are going? And I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. But yeah, at the end of the day, it worked out really well. But that's something that as far as the product was being used, it wasn't. We didn't know exactly what we wanted to see at the end of the day. But fortunately, it all worked out.
And for us, I see my champions in the back of the room. I was paired with Knowledge Hudson, and without him, I would have been just lost in trying to schedule everybody in such a large organization for trainings, because a big part of what we do within organizations is train them, all about language access. So getting people to show up to the trainings was incredibly difficult, and that was something I hadn't anticipated, and so it was really valuable. And in that same respect, just working within such a large, like you said, monolithic kind of beast of an organization is very different from the smaller nonprofits that I'm used to working with. So those are two extremely valuable things that I had not anticipated would be difficult. It's been wonderful to see how such a large organization is structured. And it's also been good for me to see that, our organization has had a lot of really good early traction. People have been really responsive to what we're doing, and everybody around me is always really excited about it. And so I forget that there are people who are not on board with what we're doing. And I forget that, sometimes we're going to have to explain to people why what we're doing is important. And so it was helpful for me to be able to sort of break our model down to people and learn how to explain better to people exactly what we're doing and why. And it's just been a really valuable program overall because, I had all these great plans for how this service was going to work when I took it to market. And then I got there to pilot, and I'm like, oh, right. It's actually a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So it's been a great program for those reasons. Pitfalls. Honestly, I can't think of any negatives because all of the things that have gone wrong are things that we've learned from as an organization, and that's exactly why I'm so happy to be participating in the program. So,
yes, once again, Knowledge Hudson's name should be mentioned because he is a fantastic individual at the Housing Authority. We love you, Knowledge. Yeah, he was a champion for us. He stuck his neck out and said, I want to have another organization work with our organization. And they were like, are you sure about that? And he said, yeah, I really want to do it. So we're both happy to work with HACP. I will echo the sentiments that a lot of other people have mentioned, that it's a safe place. It's a very padded room. And if you blow it, well, you learned a lot, but you can't succeed. I mean, I don't want to say that the expectations are so low. No, but the pressure is so low, and there is such a willingness to help. And you realize that working with the city, at least in this city, is a lot more Leslie Knope than Ron, I forget his last name, but it really is that way. I mean, everyone's like, okay, that's a good idea. How do you want us to help? And you're like, you're not going to throw me out yet? So it's a really safe space. It's a nurturing space. It's a soft space, whatever you want to use. Working with the city is great. And the fact that Pgh Lab exists to kind of let people know that it's like, yeah, the city's full of Leslie Knopes. You should probably go introduce yourself. That was really great. Now, pitfalls, we don't talk about those because we're on roofs a lot. So, but there really weren't any. There certainly have not been any pitfalls off roofs. But it just forced us. We added some new technology and some stuff that really doesn't exist at all anywhere. And it's actually all thanks to Justin Getz, who put it all together in a waterproof box. And now we can operate without power or internet access. We can reach all of our devices for something like 36 hours. And you can't buy a device like that. So it did force us to really take building our infrastructure more seriously. And we pulled it together. So those are the things I have to say. No pitfalls, really, yeah.
That's good.
So for us, the value of Pittsburgh Lab was really so we have done this many times with many companies, and the way we kind of sell Netbeez and work with our end users or customers is through an inside sales model. So what does that mean is that you do a demo, then you ship them the hardware sensors, you install the software, which is the dashboard, and then you try to follow through with the kind of WebEx meetings to make sure that the implementation goes good. And it takes some time because you have to install physical hardware in each of these remote offices, right? Because that's what we do. We monitor all the offices. So we kind of lost touch with a real implementation hands-on. So the Pittsburgh Lab was for us a good opportunity to really work next to Sylvia Harris, who is the network manager at the city of Pittsburgh, our city champion, and her team to really work through the implementation phase. Hands-on. So you get more feedback, you see goods and bads of your solution, how you can improve your solution. So definitely was good because the product, we're try, of course, and we keep trying to address these, roadblocks or ease the implementation. And second, of course, because Pittsburgh is our hometown, and so we want, of course, make sure that also the city residents and employees have good network services, and of course the desk and the network team is efficient because we bring efficiency into network management in the end. And I think we didn't have any pitfalls. I think, as always, the POC, the proof of concept, is just the first step. We just feel like we just scratched the surface of what we can do here at the city of Pittsburgh with Netbeez, because there is more. I mean, adoption takes some time. You're changing some processes, the way you support users and the way you monitor your network and so on. So this is just our foot in the door to actually expand and eventually really get adopted by the city of Pittsburgh, employees and residents eventually. So yeah.
Great. So I have one more question, and it's going to be quick, rapid fire. So the question is, what's next? How are you going to scale your impact? And then we'll open it up for Q&A if anybody has any questions for any of the panelists.
So I guess related to this project that we did in the city of Pittsburgh, yeah, so we have to continue, of course, make sure that Our users are happy, which is the innovation and performance team as part of the city of Pittsburgh. Make sure they're happy, and we keep like installing more sensors. In our case, we want to like put EBs in every city building and make sure they have complete coverage. And then as the city of Pittsburgh network expand, we have coverage also from a monitoring perspective, also for those new locations. So we have to keep working what we did so far and keep working.
What's next? I can't say. I won't say. But I will say that we want to get higher and higher. Physically, I mean, antennas. So, stop. So we want to get on top of more buildings. We want to get on top of higher buildings and towers and trees. And well, you can't get on trees, but you know what I mean. So the next time you look up and you see an antenna, wonder if it's ours, because it might be. So that's what's next for us. Just keep looking up.
And as far as Global Wordsmiths, I'm really happy to announce, we've already announced it publicly, but I'm announcing it again, that the Jefferson Regional Foundation has pledged a very generous grant to have Global Wordsmiths go into 15 to 20 organizations in the Jefferson Regional Service Area and do language access planning, which is exactly what we're doing with Pgh Lab. So it's really exciting. And from there, we hope that the impact, the social impact, will be that when this relationship ends with each of these entities, they will then go on to provide meaningful access to their services for immigrants and refugees.
Great. So what's next? We actually have been focusing a lot on, I mentioned we do both office space and non-desk bound space, and we see a real opportunity. We like the thing that we built for desktops that I kind of mentioned before. We recognized through the implementation, the pilot, and the process I talked about before, that rolling it out is not always it's not always the easiest thing to do. I mean, we got some really good information, but we saw real need, and you can see in the top left there, our product that's tailored more towards high churn, hourly, non-desk bound segments of the workplace. And it's a group of people who are often kind of not heard from, and so that's what we're actually focusing on more clearly now. We still have the desktop solution, but we've seen a real need for that product, and that's kind of what we're really focusing mostly on at this point.
So for us, next is to involve everyone here. So to get all of y'all involved and make it easier for y'all to use, what we're doing. So part of what we've been talking with John is how can we take our data and make it available in the city's parking app or other parking services. So if you're ever looking for parking or planning ahead, you have real-time data on what's available and what's not, and how we can provide an end-user experience from what we've deployed so far.
As far as this working with the city, I'm not exactly sure what's next, but we did identify a couple different ideas that we'd like to continue to explore. So one is the collection of food waste at the farmers markets, and the other is the idea of temporary compost sites in order to remediate brownfield soil. So stuff we're looking into.
Thank you. So now that Pgh Labs is wrapped up, we're going to keep working with the farms that we identified and we sort of onboarded throughout this whole Pgh Labs experience. And really we want to work with them throughout the entire season to make sure that this goes seamlessly for them, and that their customers love it too, and that this is actually providing a really valuable service to both them and their customers. And so we're really excited to sort of measure and see that impact and work with them throughout the season. And hopefully, if you guys actually end up at farmers markets this summer, maybe you'll see a farm and you can sign up for their email list, and you might see some of the things that we do with Cropolis through that. So I encourage you guys to get out and check out the awesome farms and the awesome markets we have in this city.
Awesome. So does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists? Yeah.
on them?
I think you should probably repeat the question. So the question was, yes, our model started out in 2013. Let's have businesses donate bandwidth, and how do we feel about net neutrality? I mean, what
Is there a goal of trying to assure a net neutrality so that if Verizon, et cetera, decide that it's going to be pay to play, there will still be access for everyone to access internet and communicate with one another?
Well, we have our own bandwidth graciously provided by Kinber, which is a statewide nonprofit that connects universities, school districts, big institutions. They have fiber all over the state, and they've given us a little chunk of it. And of course, we're not interested in throttling anything. Of course, our network is going to be all clear and open on all that. But to pontificate a little bit on the answer to that, I think if incumbent ISPs do go the way of becoming less net neutral or being more restrictive or tiered plans, whatever you want to say, I think that will open a market space for smaller, especially wireless ISPs that don't have the same costs for the infrastructure to come up and say, hey, we can do it better and we can do it bigger. And a lot of times we can do it faster. And in some cases, you may have never even had this connectivity, and we'll get it to you, and it'll be net neutral. So I think I'm not as worried about net neutrality in the long term, because I think people will step up and there will be solutions for it. Okay?
What's standing in the way of Pittsburgh implementing composting at scale? I know there's a lot. Well, there's more than one thing standing in the way, but
I don't
in
know
the future,
if I
we'll
know.
eventually have that. But what are the things that will need to happen?
I can't say what's standing in the way of Pittsburgh, but I can say what's standing in the way of Steel City Soils, and that's equipment and land. And one of the main things that we deal with is Pennsylvania is a cheap place to throw stuff in the landfill. So that's what makes us different from other cities who've implemented this. So we just need to be creative and figure out a model. But the fact that people are saving their food waste and bringing it to us at the market means that there's a demand for that. So maybe it's not a top-down solution. Maybe it's a bottom-up solution. So we're focusing on the people who want to do it, and maybe that way we can bring everybody along.
That's great. So I know we're running out of time. Anya, do we have time for another question, or should we, does anyone have an additional question? Yeah.
What were some unexpected outcomes in your product or your project? Something that you had no idea would come out of it that did?
So the idea of finding bilingual staff within organizations who were interested in learning how to become interpreters and then training them was something that hadn't occurred to me before this process. Yeah. So being an interpreter is just way different from just being bilingual. And so to teach sort of bilingual helpers is what we call them, people who have their heart in the right place, they want to help, to teach them how to do it well and to do it effectively is something that I'm really excited about.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
So if you have a startup or a small business that thinks this is a great opportunity, as you all have presented it, how should we consider, like, who would be my champion, or what part of the city would be kind of a good fit for me, or in what ways have you done that for yourselves? Or are you all like really good citizens of Pittsburgh and you know your city government well?
Take this a little bit.
Can you repeat the first part again? Yeah, so I think, so far for the last few cohorts, a lot of the local accelerators actually do a great work into, looking what's out there in the entrepreneurship ecosystem and also tell the startups what kind of opportunities are out there. So a lot of our companies really come from the local accelerators and the work they do and how they train and educate their companies. But we have been doing info sessions and in regards to making sure that people understand what the program is about, what we're trying to accomplish. And I serve as a liaison between startups and then the city, and so I understand also as well what are some of the different projects going on. But there's definitely room for improvement. So moving forward, we would definitely want to do a better outreach both within the city and also with the startups, so that we can better match solutions and try to grow the program as well. So. Yeah, for sure.
I want to add one thing. So just so you know, the process that happens when you apply to the program is that you're not applying necessarily for a specific entity or partner in the government. We share out to all of the internal agencies and authorities that are participating, and they choose who they think, what product or service makes most sense for them. So they bring forth those ones they feel like they can find a place for, and when there's a match, that's how you get in the program.
Thank you for adding that too. We do have a review committee consisted of 16 city employees or different, in different positions in the city, and they get to see all applications, and then they get to decide, who are the finalists. We bring the finalists to a, sort of pitch presentation where we can intimately learn more about the solutions, and a lot of them are actually here. Some of the city folks are here.
So it's very collaborative.
Yeah, very collaborative. Yeah, with that review committee and their knowledge and also their willingness to connect with the companies, that really is the main success of the program as well, into bringing in and engaging as many startups as possible.
One of the things that I've seen, again, I'm familiar with a few of the companies that are up here, but not all of them, is that they may have a core value proposition, a core thing that they do, and what this program really allows is for them to kind of tailor that to a specific need. So for me, it's all about kind of addressing something that's happening on the ground in Pittsburgh, within the city, for our residents, and then applying one of these amazing solutions to that problem. So. I'm sorry. I think we're gonna wrap up because we have some time for networking, and all of the panelists will hopefully stick around for a few minutes if you have specific questions for them. But can we give our panelists and our companies a round of applause?
Yeah, so just stick around. There is more food, so please, go ahead and connect with the companies. If you're interested about them, please, they will be sticking around for a little bit. And just wanted to say thank you for coming again, and thank you to my team and city people that are here supporting. So, great.